This is a 2010 EX250 Kawasaki Ninja budget bike, learner bike. Um, Surprisingly, there's not a whole lot of videos out there regarding the budget bikes and how to do things, and that's mainly the demographics that tend to do the most things to their bike. Because probably if you're into a budget sort of orientated bike, you're probably not dropping thousands at the local dealership either. So the kind of owner that owns this bike is typically the beginner, novice rider who wants to save a few bucks, do the work himself and herself, and that sort of thing. So I thought I'd do a quick video on it. This one is in for it's running lean. The carburetors have, the bike's sat, the carburetors are a little gummed up, and so it's running really lean. It doesn't want to, it has a flat spot off idle. It doesn't want to continue idling because I don't know, probably the carbs are gummed up. That's typically what happens with these things. So, but these things ran really lean from the factory. The EPA emissions, California dictate that this is still a carbureted motorcycle. So yeah, it's running really lean even when it was brand new. So this is a 250 two-cylinder liquid cooled dual overhead cam shim under bucket motor. They've been making these since like '88. They had the EX 250 and EX 500. They call it a Ninja, but it's not really. It doesn't have much in common with the rest of the Ninja series. The rest of the Ninja series are like mainly four cylinders. Like they had a 400. I think they actually had a 250 too, but it was a four cylinder. So they had 250, 400, 600, 636, 750, 900, 1000, 11, 12, and the ZX14. And they were called the ZX, the Ninja proper ones. And I think EX, this one's called the EX 250, and then there was the EX 500, which is also a twin. And I think they done that for insurance reasons, to segregate these bikes from the higher end, more higher strung Ninja models, therefore lower insurance rates, which makes sense because these aren't putting out the horsepower like the bigger ones. So anyways, that's the deal with these bikes. They're a good little bike. They're very budget orientated in terms of the build, but certainly light years better than a Chinese product. If you're getting into motorcycles, this is sort of what it's geared to. It's wrapped in nice looking bodywork, so it looks the part. But it's slow, and really important with these bikes, why they're popular with beginners too, is to see how low it sits. I mean, this is just above my knees, and so your feet are flat on the ground. It gives you a lot of control at low speed. So if you're just learning, I mean, this is huge. This is why a lot of people like the lower Virago bikes and the cruiser bikes, because you can get your feet flat on the ground. If you're on a tall BMW 1150 GS or 1200 GS or whatever, they're really awkward bikes. If you're straddling that thing and you're already up, and it's almost like you need a ladder to get on those big BMWs sometimes. But this is really low to the ground, so a lot of good, and it's very nimble, good brakes, so very easy to maneuver. It's light, your feet are on the ground, so great beginner's bike, And it looks the part. It gets young people into the motorcycle. There's a few things to do this. Going to do the carburetors. Going to take them off, clean them. New battery. The battery's really diminished to the point of probably no return. It's sulfated, so it needs to be replaced. Coolant, couple plugs, oil filter, do the air filter, that sort of thing. And the brake fluid. The brake fluid looks, I'll show you what the brake fluid looks like. So one of the things to look for when you do brake fluid, you'll notice that this brake fluid is a little on the brown side, and the reason is because brake fluid is hygroscopic and it attracts water, and so the water gets in the brake fluid and then it rusts the internal parts, and then you get that discoloration in the fluid, and so it's supposed to look like canola oil, like just absolutely clear. So if your brake fluid, if you're in any doubt and it starts to look a little stale like that and brown, then it needs to be replaced. They recommend every 2 years, maybe sooner. you know, if you live in wet climates, actually the moment you crack, for instance, a brake container, brake fluid container, you know, you got about 30 days to use it. It tracks water that vigorously. So, you know, and these brake lines are kind of hilarious. They got date stamps on them somewhere on here. I don't know if I could find them, but anyways, there's date stamps on the brake lines, and they recommend the brake lines get replaced every 4 years. Although I've seen, and I don't recommend it, I've seen them, you know, from 1980s bikes, early 80s, and they still got the original lines on them. So not really recommending them. Not saying that's great, but that's what I have seen. One of the things you should look for on these bikes, or any bike, modern motorcycles, the kind of rubber material that you're using isn't as good as it used to be, of course, and the shrink. And so so all these clamps around, say like where your coolant lines are, your clamps on your carburetors down there, give them a little snug, because the rubber shrinks up, and then, you know, as the bike ages, it needs to be give the screws a little snug. You can see actually these clamps are not loose, but they're the rubber shrunk, and the clamps are loose enough that it's getting that residue from the coolant, and it's not really leaking, but it's kind of weeping. So, and that's because this rubber has shrunk over time. So all bikes, no matter what, they get a little up in the years, and this is a 2010, so, you know, 13 years old, and you need to pay attention to those things. When you put the panels back on with those little edges, and I'll show you the panel in case you're wondering how to get the seat off too, because that's almost the biggest thing, sometimes just getting the seat off. So on these panels, there's one here, and then there's one there, and then one there. Then there's a little clip where it slides back into, but there's a Phillips that holds the side panels on, and there are these little Phillips there. If you use a number 2, it'll strip the screws, and then if you strip the head, you can't get it out. You gotta maybe tap and drill it, and it just snowballs into an ugly affair. So use the right screwdriver. Number 3 on the air box here, the lid, and number 3 on the seat. And the seat bolts are right here and here. So after you get the side panel off, then you get access to the seat, and the seat comes off, and then you got access to take the tank off, etc., etc. But I was going to say, you only use silicone spray on these, because then if you use WD-40 or some other oil-based lubricants, it has a tendency sometimes to swell the rubber or shrink it, or I don't know, suck the goodness out of it, whatever the hell it does. I have no idea, but it's not good for the rubber bit. So always use a silicone-based lubricant or a grease, and just put a little grease on there, and then the next time you pull the panels off, they won't be so tight, and when you put it back on, they'll go on so much easier. This piece, so it slides under there, then pops in, and then there's a washable air filter under here. You pull it out, you rinse it out with say gasoline, then you wring it out, and you put a little motor oil on it, then you wring it out again and put it back together, slide it in, and you're done. You don't need to buy any filters, but the foam does deteriorate, so you should buy a filter at some point if the foam starts falling apart. It's amazing. One of the most confusing things about working on motorcycles sometimes is just simply how to get the seat off. Every bike has their own ideas about how to put a seat on and then retain it, and some of the worst ones are like Z1000s, and they actually put the keyhole right underneath the tail. I don't have one handy here at the moment, but yeah, right under the tail, so very not so obvious. Yeah, and look at the pipes on these things. They're like 3/4 inch pipes, and they're so weird. They come all the way out into the front, way out there, and they're so thin. So that's kind of weird on the little 250. Anyways, good bikes. If you keep the oil change, they last a long time, and you know, they just drive it gingerly, and yeah, they're good Japanese quality. And that's about it. I'll do another video on the carburetor cleaning portion, and this would be a good one to do because they're fairly simple. Anyways, till then, hope that helps some people. And if I do the video because some people are thinking about purchasing these bikes, and they're not sure how they are. I mean, they're okay. I wouldn't go to South America on one, for example, but for around town, learning how to ride, they're perfectly acceptable. And the only thing I have to say about them, I don't like that they're wrapped in plastic, because as a beginner bike, when you dump it, of course, that's the first thing that breaks, and that's really expensive, the plastic. They only carry them for 7 to 11 years from Kawasaki, and then they start discontinuing things, and then right before they discontinue, the price goes through the roof. So yeah, naked bikes are the best, and even something with crash bars would be even better. So anyways, that's just my 2 cents. Hope that helps somebody get their seat off and where the battery is, and kind of an overview of the 250. It's kind of interesting seeing it naked. Gives you a different perspective on what you're going to be buying. So anyways, we'll do a video on the carbs.